I had exactly $214.38 left in my checking account when my stepmother slid a sealed FedEx envelope across the hospital tray table and said, "Sign these, Maya. It's just paperwork." My right arm was still in a sling from surgery, my head foggy from anesthesia, and my phone kept vibrating with the same warning from my bank app. Autopay failed. Inside the envelope was a notarized document transferring the deed of my late father's lake house into her name, effective immediately. She had timed it for the one day I couldn't drive, couldn't think straight, and couldn't even lift a pen without pain. I remember staring at the signature line and noticing something I'd never seen before, a faint indent in the paper, like someone had traced my name already. She smiled like she was doing me a favor. I put the envelope down and whispered, "I'm not signing anything." That's when she leaned in and said the sentence that turned my fear into a plan. "If you miss this, you lose everything." Let me take you back. My name is Maya Sloan. I was 24, a paramedic in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I had the kind of calm voice that makes strangers trust you in emergencies. The flaw that came with it was uglier. I waited too long to confront people. I could talk a stranger through a panic attack, but I'd let my own family walk all over me and call it love. When people looked at our photos, they saw a clean, polished life. A stucco house with a pool, a German SUV in the driveway, holiday cards that said blessed. What they didn't see was the internal arithmetic of my day. How many minutes until I could leave the room without being accused of storming off? How many errands I could complete before my stepbrother decided he needed something, and my stepmother decided I was the only one reliable enough to do it. My father, Graham Sloan, wasn't a monster. That was the hard part. He was warm in a distracted way, the kind of man who'd kiss your forehead and forget the parent-teacher conference existed. He ran a small construction company, and he lived like a man who thought if he worked hard enough, the world would stay simple. Then my mother died when I was 9. 2 years later, Tessa moved in. She had perfect posture and a voice that never rose. She didn't need to yell. She used scheduling, guilt, and paperwork the way other people used fists. She came with a son, Carter, who was 14 at the time. Already tall, already charming, already convinced the world should soften when he walked into it. The first week she lived with us, she reorganized our kitchen. She took the family photos off the wall and replaced them with framed typography prints about gratitude. She cleaned out my mother's closet and donated everything before I could touch it. When I cried, she pressed a hand to her chest and said, "Maya, honey, it's not healthy to cling." After that, she gave me a list. Not written on an index card, not taped to a door. Tessa wasn't that crude. She used laminated chore charts, color-coded planners, and family meetings, where she spoke slowly like a therapist, and everyone else was expected to nod. Carter got responsibility tasks that sounded impressive. Manage the trash schedule, help with finances, oversee the pool service. I got the tasks that were invisible but endless. Laundry, dishes, grocery runs, cleaning baseboards, watching the dog, making sure Carter had what he needed before his big day. If I complained, Tessa didn't punish me. She reframed me. "Your father is under so much pressure," she'd say in that calm, practiced tone. "You're strong, Maya. You can handle it. Carter is sensitive. We have to be careful with him." Graham would look at me with tired eyes and say, "Help your stepmom out, kiddo. She's doing her best." And that was it. That was the whole architecture of my childhood. If I resisted, I wasn't disobedient. I was ungrateful. The first vivid incident that I still taste when I think about it happened when I was 15. Carter was getting ready for a school banquet, some leadership award, a hotel ballroom, the whole thing. Tessa bought him a suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe. The day of the banquet, she came to my room holding a garment bag. "Steam this," she said. I had homework, a quiz the next day, and a shift at the diner I worked weekends to cover my own expenses. I told her I couldn't. She stood in my doorway and smiled, small and sad. Maya, do you want Carter to be embarrassed? Your father is so proud of him. Why can't Carter steam his own suit? Her smile didn't move. Because he'll do it wrong. And then it'll be my fault for not supporting him. And then your father will be disappointed in this family. So I steamed the suit. I drove Carter to the hotel. I waited in the lobby until the banquet ended because Tessa said it wasn't safe for me to drive home alone. When Carter walked out, laughing with his friends, he didn't look at me. He didn't say thank you. He slid into the passenger seat and said, "I'm starving. Can you hit the drive-thru?" I remember gripping the steering wheel hard enough to blanch my knuckles and hearing my own voice come out flat. Sure. That night I realized something I didn't have words for yet. Being strong in that house meant being used. The second incident happened when I was 19, after I'd gotten my EMT certification. I was proud of myself in a way that felt almost dangerous. I'd built something that didn't belong to them. My first paycheck came in, and I opened a checking account, my first real step toward adulthood. Tessa found the debit card in my backpack while tidying. She held it up like she'd discovered contraband. "What is this?" she asked. "My account," I said carefully. "For my paychecks." Tessa's eyes flicked toward the hallway to make sure Graham wasn't within earshot. Then she lowered her voice. "Maya, sweetheart, separate accounts create division. We're a family. Families share." I told her I needed it. I told her I was saving for paramedic school. She didn't argue. She laughed, quietly, almost kindly. "You don't need paramedic school. You already have a job. What you need is stability, and that comes from being part of a unit. Don't make money into an idol." That night, my wallet went missing. By morning, the debit card was back on the counter with a sticky note. "Found this. Please be more careful. Love you." 2 weeks later, $600 disappeared from my account. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She didn't even act offended. "Oh," she said, as if remembering. "Yes, the utilities were short. I meant to tell you. Don't worry, it all evens out." It didn't. It never did. By the time I was 24, the pattern was so normal I could predict it like a weather system. Carter would want something. Tessa would manage it. Graham would stay exhausted and agreeable, and I would fill the gaps. Then my father died. Not dramatically, not in a way that made people whisper. A heart attack in the hardware store parking lot on a hot Tuesday. 1 minute he was texting me about a new grill he wanted, the next minute he was gone. Grief doesn't always look like sobbing. For me, it looked like getting very quiet and very useful. I handled the paperwork Tessa handed me. I answered calls from relatives. I worked extra shifts because being in an ambulance made my brain focus on other people's emergencies instead of mine. And then, 3 weeks after the funeral, Tessa hosted a celebration of life fundraiser gala at the country club. Not because she loved my father's memory, because she loved being seen. She told everyone it was for a heart health charity. There were silent auction items, a string quartet, white orchids on every table. The room was full of people from Graham's business network, contractors, suppliers, the banker who'd financed his projects, a couple of city council guys who liked saying Graham was salt of the earth. I wore a black dress and a neutral face. Tessa made me stand near the entrance and greet people because she said I had the right look for sincerity. Carter wore a tailored suit and moved through the crowd like a future politician. I didn't want to be there, but I was still doing what I always did, filling the gaps. That night, as people drank champagne and told me how sorry they were, the club's event coordinator handed me a small envelope. "Someone asked me to give this to you," she said. No name, no return address, just my name, Maya, written in block letters. Inside was a USB drive and a single sticky note. "Don't sign anything. Ask about the lake house. Check the metadata." Metadata wasn't a word people used around me unless I was dealing with body cam footage for an incident report. I stared at the note until my eyes stung. I slipped the USB into my clutch like it was fragile. Across the room, I saw Tessa watching me. She looked away first. That was the first time I felt it. The smallest tremor of power, like the floor shifting beneath an old lie. Later that night, after the gala ended and the club staff started stacking chairs, Tessa cornered me near the coat check. "Where were you?" she asked, voice soft enough that no one else could hear. "Here," I said. Her eyes dropped to my clutch. "You look pale. Are you okay?" I lied because I had practice. "Just tired." Tessa nodded and adjusted the collar of my dress like a mother would. Her fingers were cold. "Try not to be dramatic in public, Maya. People are watching." I looked at her, and for the first time I didn't feel like a child. I felt like someone observing a system. "Okay," I said. That night, I went home, sat on my bed, and plugged the USB into my laptop. It contained 3 files. One was a PDF labeled Sloan Estate Summary. One was a video clip labeled Poolcam 0421. And one was a folder labeled Deed Drafts. The estate summary was short, but it made my throat close. It listed assets I didn't know my father still owned, a small equipment yard, 2 work trucks, and, highlighted, a lake house in Payson. I remembered that lake house. We'd gone there when I was little, before my mother died. It smelled like pine and sunscreen. My father would grill hot dogs and tell me to watch the water because it's not forgiving. After Mom died, we stopped going. Tessa said it was too remote and too much maintenance, and then the subject disappeared. The second file, the pool cam clip, was a short video from our backyard security system. It showed Tessa at the patio table with a stack of documents, her phone on speaker. A man's voice, smooth, professional, was explaining something about transfer timing and notarization. Then Tessa said very clearly, "She'll sign. She always signs." The man chuckled once. "And if she doesn't?" Tessa's voice stayed calm. "Then I'll remind her what she owes, and if she gets difficult, we'll use the clause." "What clause?" the man asked. Tessa paused like she was smiling. "The canary clause." I didn't know what that meant yet, but hearing her say it like it was ordinary made my stomach turn. The deed drafts folder contained multiple versions of a quitclaim deed. My name was typed in different places as grantor, signing away interest. One version had a scanned signature that looked like mine, but a little too neat, a little too steady. It was dated 2 days after my father's funeral, on a day I'd been on shift for 16 hours straight. My chest went hot. I opened the file properties and clicked into details because of that sticky note. And there it was. Created, Tessa Harrow. Modified by, Tessa Harrow. Printed, Tessa Harrow. The signature wasn't just suspicious, it was trackable. The file had an embedded author tag, it had revision history, it had fingerprints. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there with my laptop on my knees and let the new reality settle in. My stepmother wasn't managing the estate, she was taking it, and she was using me as the legal mechanism. The next morning, I went to the bank on my way home from shift. I asked for a printout of recent transactions. The banker, a woman with tired eyes and a nameplate that said Janine, looked at me like she recognized something familiar. "You're Graham Sloane's daughter," she said softly. I nodded. Janine leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Did you know there was an irrevocable trust set up years ago with you listed as beneficiary?" My mouth went dry. "No." She hesitated, then slid a piece of paper toward me with account identifiers partially masked. "I can't give you details without documentation, but I can tell you there's been activity, requests, people calling pretending to be you. Pretending to be me." I stared at the paper. "Who?" Janine's eyes flicked to the lobby. "Your stepmother has been here, with a man. He introduced himself as the family attorney." "I don't think we have a family attorney," I said. Janine's lips pressed thin. "Then you should find one." I thanked her and walked out into the Arizona sun, feeling like my skin didn't fit. That afternoon, I called the number on the sticky note attached to the USB files. It wasn't on the note, but it was embedded in the PDF's footer, small, like someone wanted me to notice if I looked closely. A man answered on the second ring. Maya? Yes, I said. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. My name is Elliot Park. I'm your father's former project accountant. Accountant, not family, not friend. Someone inside the machine. I shouldn't be calling you, he said, but I couldn't watch this happen. Why did you send me that? I asked, keeping my voice steady the way I did in ambulances. Because Tessa is moving money, he said, and because your dad tried to protect you. He told me something I'd never heard. After my mother died, my father had set up an irrevocable trust, one that couldn't be altered once funded. It was meant to ensure I'd have something even if he remarried, even if the business went under, even if life got messy. Tessa can't touch the trust directly, Elliot said, but she can drain everything else and force you to sign away assets outside the trust. She's doing it fast. How fast? I asked. Elliot's voice tightened. There's a deadline in the probate filings. She's pushing an expedited petition. If you don't respond, the court may assume you consent. It's procedural. It's not fair, but it's how it works. I gripped my phone. So what do I do? You need a lawyer, he said immediately. Not her lawyer. Yours. I told him I had $214.38. He paused. Then you need the right kind of lawyer. That night, my shoulder pain flared so badly I ended up back in the hospital. A complication from surgery, inflammation, the kind of thing that happens when you go back to lifting patients too soon because you can't afford time off. That's how I ended up in that hospital bed with Tessa sliding the FedEx envelope toward me, smiling like a saint. Just sign, she said, and we can all move forward. I looked at the document and saw the notary stamp. I saw the deed transfer language. I saw my name, and I saw the indent again, like my signature had been traced. Tessa watched my face. Don't make this hard, Maya. It's already hard, I said quietly. Her smile softened. If you miss this, you lose everything. I met her eyes. Then I guess I won't miss it. I pushed the envelope back. Tessa's expression changed. Not angry, not yet. Calculating. You're confused, she said. You're on medication. You don't understand the stakes. I understand enough, I said. She leaned closer, voice still gentle. Maya, do you know how expensive your father's medical bills were? Do you know what it cost to bury him? Do you know how much Carter sacrificed to support this family emotionally? There it was. The familiar currency, guilt. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just reached for my phone and texted Elliot. She brought the deed. I didn't sign. What now? His reply came fast. Good. Do not sign anything. I'm bringing someone to you. 2 hours later, a woman walked into my hospital room with a leather tote and a face that looked like she didn't waste words. She was in her late 30s, hair pulled back, wearing a blazer over scrubs like she'd come straight from court and didn't care if people noticed. Maya Sloan? She asked. Yes. I'm Nina Calder, attorney. Elliot called me. I blinked. He said I needed a lawyer. I can't afford one. Nina set her tote down and pulled out a business card. We'll talk about that. Right now, I need you to tell me the truth in the simplest way you can. So I did. I told her about the gala, the USB, the pool cam clip, the deed drafts, the bank, the trust, the FedEx envelope. Nina listened without interruption. When I finished, she nodded once and said, Okay. That was it. Just okay. Then she asked, Do you have your father's death certificate? Tessa has it, I said. Nina's eyes narrowed. Of course she does. She pulled out a legal pad. We're going to do 3 things. 1. File an emergency response in probate so nothing moves without your consent. 2. Request an injunction, a court order that prevents Tessa from transferring or selling assets. 3. Preserve evidence. Preserve evidence, I repeated. Nina pointed to my laptop on the tray table. Metadata matters. File properties matter. We're going to create a forensic image of that USB and your computer files. Chain of custody. I swallowed. This feels extreme. Nina looked at me, calm and direct. Maya, You're not being dramatic. You're being late. Tessa has been planning. Now you get to plan too. She paused, then said it once, like she wanted it to land in my bones. This isn't revenge. This is justice. I exhaled slowly. Nina explained the canary clause after I told her about the pool cam audio. In some trusts, she said, there's language designed to punish tampering. A canary clause is basically a tripwire. If someone tries to alter the trust, steal from it, or use fraud to redirect assets, the clause triggers consequences, like disinheritance or automatic reporting requirements. Automatic reporting? I asked. Nina nodded. If your father set it up right, it may require the trustee to notify beneficiaries, or even law enforcement if certain actions occur. It's not common, but it's not unheard of. I stared at her. So if Tessa tried to use me to sign away things, it might trigger the clause, Nina said, which means she may have already stepped on the tripwire. For the first time since my father's funeral, I felt something like relief. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. Don't talk to outsiders. This is family business. My hand tightened around the phone. Nina glanced at it and said, Good. Keep that. Keep it? I asked. Nina's mouth tilted slightly. It's an admission of control. It's not a confession, but it's a thread. We pull threads. I was discharged the next day. Nina told me to go home, act normal, and touch nothing. Don't tip her off, she said. Let her keep thinking you're tired and manageable. I nodded. I could do that. I'd been doing it my whole life. When I walked into the house, Tessa was in the kitchen like she'd been waiting. She wore a cream cardigan and held a mug with both hands like a wellness influencer. There you are, she said. How do you feel? Better, I lied. She stepped closer and brushed imaginary lint off my sleeve. I worry about you. You're so independent. It's exhausting. I forced a small smile. I'm fine. Tessa studied me the way she studied paperwork. I made a schedule for your recovery. Light duties. Carter will need rides to his licensing classes, but you can handle that, right? I nodded again, because the nod was a shield. That night, I lay in bed and listened to the house. Carter's laughter from his room, Tessa's quiet footsteps, the dishwasher humming. I remembered the pool cam clip. She'll sign. She always signs. I opened my laptop and copied the USB files onto an external drive Nina had given me. I didn't alter anything. I didn't rename anything. I followed her instructions like it was an emergency protocol. Then I waited. 2 days later, Nina called. We filed the probate response, she said. Tessa's petition is paused. What happens now? I asked. Now she escalates, Nina said, matter of fact. People like her always do. She was right. That afternoon, Tessa came into my room holding a folder. Her smile was too careful. Sweetheart, she said, we need to talk. I sat up slowly, protecting my shoulder. Okay. She opened the folder and slid a document toward me. Carter is applying for a business loan. The bank needs confirmation that the construction company assets are stable. This is just a statement that you won't contest anything. I looked at the page. It wasn't just a statement. It was an affidavit. Legal language, sworn under penalty of perjury. It said I acknowledged Tessa as executor and waived my right to challenge transfers. An affidavit. Nina had mentioned that word. She'd said affidavits were powerful because they were sworn statements the court could rely on. Tessa tapped the signature line with a manicured nail. Sign it and we can stop all this stress. I'm not signing, I said. For the first time, her voice sharpened. Maya, don't be stubborn. I'm not stubborn, I said. I'm careful. Tessa's eyes tightened. Who have you been talking to? No one, I lied, because Nina told me to. Tessa leaned closer. I know you, Maya. You get ideas and then you ruin things. Don't ruin this. I watched her face and realized something new. She wasn't trying to convince me. She was trying to measure how much I knew. I kept my tone flat. I'm tired. Tessa stared for a long beat, then snapped the folder shut. Fine, she said, but you need to understand the reality. Your father's accounts are messy. There's debt. If this goes to court, you'll end up with nothing, and Carter will suffer. I said nothing. She walked to the door, then paused, half-turned. People like you always think they're the hero, she said quietly. But you're just… Loud background noise. Don't embarrass your father's memory. Then she left. My stomach churned, but my mind stayed clear. I called Nina. She's pushing affidavits now, I said. Nina didn't sound surprised. Good. It means she's nervous. How does nervous help us? I asked. It makes her sloppy, Nina said. And sloppy leaves trails. That evening, Elliot texted me. Check your mail. I walked to the mailbox and found another envelope. No return address. Inside was a copy of an email chain between Tessa and someone named Marvin Holt. The subject line, escrow timing, deed recording. Escrow, deed recording. Terms that belong to property transfers, not grief. The emails laid out a plan, record the lake house deed transfer immediately after my father's death, before probate oversight tightened. There was also mention of creating a clean chain of title. At the bottom, Marvin wrote, if she refuses, use the medical incapacity angle. We can argue undue influence isn't possible if she's deemed unstable. I felt cold. Nina read the emails and said, we're adding another action. What? I asked. A restraining order, she said. Not just for physical safety, for financial harassment. And we're reporting Marvin Holt to the state bar if he's an attorney. If he's not, we report him for practicing law without a license. How do we prove the emails are real? I asked. Nina's tone stayed calm. That's where your evidence twist becomes our advantage. Metadata, header data. We'll subpoena the email provider. We'll pull server logs. We'll match timestamps to document drafts. It's a pattern. I swallowed. This is getting bigger. Nina replied, it already is. You're just finally seeing the size. A week later, Nina met me in her office. It smelled like coffee and paper. She slid 2 folders across the table. The first folder is what you already know, she said. Deed drafts, pool cam, emails, probate filings. I nodded. She tapped the second folder. This came from the trustee. My throat tightened. The trust? Nina opened it and turned the documents toward me. There it was. A trust instrument signed years ago, my father's name at the bottom, and a clause highlighted in yellow. Canary clause. If any party attempts to obtain beneficiary consent through fraud, coercion, or forged documentation, the trustee shall freeze distributions and notify the beneficiary in writing. Below that was a letter dated 3 days after my father's death. To Maya Sloan, we have received irregular requests regarding trust assets. Pursuant to the Canary Clause, we are notifying you and freezing all discretionary distributions pending investigation. I stared at it. They tried to access it. Nina nodded. Yes, and the clause did its job. I felt my eyes burn, but I didn't cry. I just sat there and let the anger settle into something sharper. Nina closed the folder gently. The second folder changed everything. I looked up. What now? Nina's eyes were steady. Now we stop playing defense. Now we set a public set piece that forces accountability. A public set piece, I repeated, like it was a term in a protocol. Nina's mouth tilted faintly. We're going to use the next hearing. Tessa had requested a probate hearing at the county courthouse to argue she should have full authority as executor, and that I was emotionally compromised. She filed a statement implying I was unstable after surgery and grief. She even attached a letter from a therapist I'd never met, someone who'd apparently reviewed my behavior based on Tessa's accounts. Nina said, we let her tell her story in front of a judge, then we introduce facts. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. The night before, Tessa hosted another event, because of course she did. A charity board meeting at our house, people with clipped voices and expensive watches, sitting in our living room talking about community impact. Tessa wanted an audience. She always did. She asked me to pour wine. I did, because I was done being reactive. I was strategic now. At one point, a man in a navy blazer approached me near the kitchen island. "You're Maya," he said, offering his hand. "I'm Roland Kim." His name didn't mean anything to me until he added, "I used to serve on the hospital foundation board with your mother." My chest tightened. My mother's name rarely came up in that house, and when it did, it was treated like an inconvenience. Roland's eyes held mine with something like recognition. "You look like her," he said softly. Same mouth, same focus. Tessa appeared behind him like she'd sensed the conversation. "Roland," she said brightly. "So good to see you. Maya is keeping busy." Roland didn't look away from me. "I'm sorry about Graham," he said. "He was a decent man." "Thank you," I managed. Roland hesitated, then said quietly, "If you need anything, my office number is on the foundation website." Tessa's smile stayed perfect. "Maya doesn't need anything," she said. "She has family." Roland glanced at Tessa, then back to me, and I saw something shift in his expression, like he'd just read a line of a story he didn't like. After he left, I asked Nina about him. Nina said, "Roland Kim is a board member at First Valley Bank." The bank, Janine's bank, the place where Tessa had been making requests. An ally identity twist, revealed softly, without fanfare, like a door opening. Thursday morning, I wore a plain blazer and my sling. I wanted the judge to see the injury, but not pity, just context. The courthouse smelled like old air conditioning and polished floors. Tessa arrived with Carter and a man in a gray suit, Marvin Holt. Carter looked bored. Marvin looked confident. Tessa looked serene. She hugged me in the hallway like we were close, her cheek cool against mine. "Let's not make this ugly," she murmured. I stepped back. "Then tell the truth." Her smile didn't break. Truth is subjective. Inside the courtroom, the judge, Judge Hargrove, sat with a face that looked like he'd seen every family lie and didn't respect any of them. Marvin spoke first. He described me as emotionally compromised and implied I was being manipulated by outside parties. He said Tessa had carried the burden of Graham's death and deserved streamlined control to settle debts. Tessa took the stand. She spoke gently about sacrifice, about grief, about how she only wanted unity. Then she said, "Maya has always struggled with instability. She gets overwhelmed and lashes out. I worry she's not thinking clearly." I watched her speak and felt my old reflex, the urge to shrink, to doubt myself. I put the phone face down in my mind and waited. Nina stood. "Your Honor," she said, "we'd like to introduce evidence." Marvin objected. Nina responded with calm citations. The judge allowed it. Nina submitted the deed drafts with embedded metadata author tags. She explained in simple language how document properties show who created and modified a file. She played the pool cam audio. Tessa's face didn't change until the moment her own voice filled the courtroom. "She'll sign. She always signs." A quiet ripple moved through the benches. Nina submitted the email chain and requested subpoenas for server logs. She explained what an escrow dispute was and how deed recording works, how timing matters, how intent is proven. Then Nina held up the trust document. "This trust contains a canary clause," she said, "a fraud tripwire. When Ms. Harrow attempted irregular access, the trustee froze distributions and notified my client." Judge Hargrove leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Harrow," he said, "did you attempt to access trust assets?" Tessa's voice stayed soft. "I was trying to understand what resources were available to settle Graham's obligations." Nina didn't raise her voice. She simply placed a document on the evidence stand. "Your Honor," she said, "we have a notarized quitclaim deed presented to my client while she was hospitalized post-surgery, along with an affidavit pressuring her to waive contest rights. We believe this constitutes coercion and attempted fraud." Marvin objected again. The judge overruled him. Nina turned to the judge. We're requesting an emergency injunction, an asset freeze, and removal of Ms. Harrow as executor pending investigation. Tessa finally looked directly at me. Her eyes weren't furious. They were coldly wounded, like I'd violated a private contract. Judge Hargrove's voice sharpened. Ms. Harrow, you are asking this court for expedited authority while simultaneously presenting documents that appear designed to bypass oversight. That's concerning. The courtroom went silent. Judge Hargrove continued, I am granting a temporary injunction. No assets are to be sold, transferred, or encumbered without court approval. I am also ordering a forensic audit of the estate transactions and referring this matter to the county attorney for potential fraud review. Tessa's hands tightened around her purse strap. Carter shifted in his seat, suddenly not bored. Marvin's jaw clenched like he'd miscalculated the room. Outside the courtroom, Tessa followed me into the hallway, her calm finally cracking. You did this in public, she hissed. I looked at her and felt something unfamiliar. Distance. You made it public, I said. You just didn't think I'd speak. Carter stepped closer. Maya. Nina moved slightly in front of me without being dramatic, a shield made of law and posture. Any further contact goes through counsel, Nina said. Tessa's expression flickered. Then she forced her smile back on like a mask. This isn't over, she said, and walked away. It wasn't over, but the direction had changed. Over the next month, the forensic audit did what audits do. It turned feelings into numbers. It traced transfers, documented requests, and found inconsistencies that no family story could smooth over. It revealed that Tessa had attempted to move $38,000 from one of my father's business accounts into an LLC she'd formed 2 weeks before his death. An LLC shell, set up quietly, with Carter listed as manager. Nina explained it to me in her office, tapping the chart with her pen. This is why we love paper, she said. Paper doesn't get tired. Paper doesn't forget. The county attorney opened an investigation. The trustee kept the trust frozen until the court clarified beneficiaries and removed Tessa from any control. Judge Hargrove appointed a neutral administrator, and then, quietly, without fireworks, the consequences landed. Tessa was ordered to vacate the house pending asset review. A civil restraining order prohibited her from contacting me directly. Marvin Holt was reported to the state bar. His license was suspended during investigation for unethical conduct related to probate filings and coercive tactics. Carter tried to call me once. I watched the name on my screen and felt the old pull. Habit. Guilt. The reflex to fix. Then I remembered the pool cam clip. She'll sign. She always signs. I didn't answer. The last time I saw Tessa in person was at the house, when she came to collect her things under sheriff's supervision. She carried a box of framed photos, none of them featuring me. She paused in the living room and looked around like she was trying to memorize what she was losing. This is what you wanted, she said softly. I kept my voice even. I wanted the truth. Tessa's eyes narrowed. Truth is expensive, she said. So is fraud, I replied. She stared at me for a long moment, then lifted her chin and walked out. The legal process didn't end in a dramatic confession. It ended the way real justice often ends, in filings, orders, and quiet, enforceable boundaries. Tessa accepted a settlement that returned misappropriated funds and relinquished claims in exchange for avoiding criminal charges, because the county attorney weighed intent, evidence strength, and the cost of trial. The court entered a permanent order removing her from any fiduciary role. The trust's canary clause remained a documented trigger point, and the trustee issued a formal letter recognizing me as the protected beneficiary my father intended. For the first time, my father's careful planning worked the way it was supposed to. I drove up to the lake house in Payson 2 weeks after the injunction became permanent. The road smelled like pine. The air got cooler as the elevation rose. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, the cabin looked smaller than it did in my memory, but the porch still creaked the same way when I stepped onto it. Inside, dust floated in the slanted light. I found a box tucked into a cabinet above the old microwave. It was labeled in my father's handwriting, "Maya, when you're ready." Inside was a letter. He didn't write poetry. He wrote like a man who built things and hoped they held. "Maya, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to fix everything myself. I'm sorry for that. I tried to set things up so you'd be protected, even if I made mistakes. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your signature. If someone demands you shrink so they can feel bigger, walk away. Love, Dad." I sat on the cabin floor and let myself cry quietly, the way you do when you're finally safe enough to feel what you've been holding. 1 year later, I still woke up early, because paramedics always do, but my mornings looked different. I had a small apartment in Scottsdale with sunlight in the kitchen. I'd paid off my credit cards. I'd enrolled in night classes, slowly building toward a bachelor's degree in emergency management. I still worked on an ambulance, but I'd moved to a supervisor track. Less lifting, more training, more stability. And for the first time, my money stayed mine. The trust didn't make me rich in the way people imagine. It made me secure. It gave me choices. It gave me the ability to say no without fear. I kept my relationship with Carter exactly where it belonged. Non-existent. Not out of hatred, out of clarity. Tessa tried once to send a message through a mutual acquaintance about reconciliation. Nina shut it down with a single letter referencing the restraining order. Paper does what it does. Sometimes, when I'm driving between calls at dawn, I think about that hospital tray table and the FedEx envelope. I think about how close I came to signing simply because it was easier to comply than to fight. Then I remember what Nina said and what my father wrote. Boundaries aren't loud. They're enforceable. If you've ever been the reliable one, the one everyone leans on until you can't breathe, I want to ask you something. What would you do if the person who trained you to serve tried to make you sign your life away? And if you want more stories where justice comes from evidence, filings, and quiet consequences, subscribe and tell me in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between peace and truth?